and welcome to the first episode of Fishbowl Tales. We're coming in a little bit late in the build, but we still have a ton of small projects to get finished before this thing can actually run and drive. Today, we're going to be talking about the cooling system. Alright, let's talk cooling system. So, there were two options that we had available to us with our situation and the way the bus is configured. We could have either gone with an electric motor to run the fan or a hydraulic motor. To run the electric motor, it would have been a big draw on our charging system for the motor. We're also going to be running a transmission cooler, a remote transmission cooler that has its own fan, so that's going to draw. Plus, I'm mounting the intercooler in kind of an unorthodox location. Because it is a rear engine bus, I didn't want to have to cut more holes or use a really low profile intercooler. So we went with a full 4-inch thick front mount style intercooler like you would find on like a race car. So that's going to have two fans of its own that are going to draw more current through our electrical system. So we decided to go with a hydraulic system. Now with a hydraulic system, you have a hydraulic pump. In this case it's our power steering pump, since the bus doesn't have power steering. We're going to use that to run this hydraulic motor, which is going to drive our fan. So this system is going to be a little bit more complicated than an electric cooling system would have been, but I think it's going to be a little more efficient and it's going to be a little more foolproof in the end once it's all set up and running. So in order to make this big fan here spin, we're going to need to build some parts. This is a stock cooling fan off of a 2001 Dodge 3500 truck. Usually it would use a temperature controlled clutch assembly that would spin the fan up once it was hot enough. It would engage the clutch, the fan would start going, and it would cool the motor down. In our case, since we're not using a clutch, we're using temperature control valves and things like that. We're going to have to make a big hub. So I've got this chunk here of aluminum that is 1 inch by 7.5 inches. We're going to machine that so that it fits the shaft on this pump. The complicated part of all of this is that this pump actually has a tapered shaft. Not only does it have a tapered shaft, but it also has a woodruff key in it. And it's all got to be compact because we've got to be able to get the retaining nut on the end of it. So, that's what we're looking forward to in today's episode. To start off today's project, we're going to be machining the fan hub. This is a piece of 7.5 by 1 inch thick 6061 aluminum. As you can see there, the surface finish, if it'll focus, isn't all that great. It's been saw cut, so it's a little bit oversized for what we need. So we're going to go ahead and machine it nice and flat on both sides. Alright, so a quick explanation of what exactly I've done here. So you can see there, I've machined a little bit of a boss into the middle of that hub. That boss there is going to fit right in the center of our fan blade there, and that'll be our registration in the middle of that hole so that I can locate all of these bolt holes accurately. So I'm going to go ahead and just clean the paint off of this inside surface with a little bit of emery cloth. Just going to try to get everything nice and true and smooth. Since this is a stamped piece, the inner diameter isn't really all that accurate, but it's accurate enough for what we're doing. Alright, so now that we've got the basic part machined, what I'm going to do is spray this down with a little bit of layout fluid, put the fan on top of it, and we'll scribe each of those bolt holes onto this outer ring. I recommend laying something down on the table when you do this, especially if you're using the spray-on style of layout fluid, because this stuff goes absolutely everywhere. Alright, we'll let that dry up and we'll come back and scribe those holes. Alrighty, now that it's good and dry, we're going to place the fan on top of it and scribe the holes. So that fits right into that register, just like that. And I'm going to go ahead and scribe all the holes, even the two for the dowel pins. And there you have it. That's our hole layout right there. So now that we've got all the hole locations figured out, I'm going to go ahead and center punch each of those so that it's a little bit easier to locate and drill when we go to machine all of that. Good morning. It is day 2 of the fan hub project. The camera died yesterday while I was machining the part, so I'm not sure where exactly we left off. I did get a little bit carried away yesterday, and I got the thing almost finished. I've gone ahead and machined the tapered bore in the center. I've counterbored the front face here so that the retaining nut and washer can fit in there. I wanted to just do a little bit of a counterboring there so that I wasn't compromising the entire structure of the material. I didn't want to actually take a whole lot of material off of this. On the back side here, I turned it down in order to achieve the clearance needed for the mounting hardware on the hydraulic motor. So you can see when that goes on there, there's enough space underneath to get our mounting hardware in there. Now the only thing left to do with this piece here is to broach the keyway in the center of the hole. Now with this being a tapered bore, it's a little bit trickier because they don't sell bushings to broach a keyway into a tapered hole. So I've gone ahead and machined the bushing that we need. Oh, there it is. sort of. This is the bushing that we're going to use to broach the keyway. It's got the same 3-degree taper that the bore does, and it's got a slot to fit our keyway broach down in there. So we'll go ahead and do that and see how it goes. So our first order of business before we actually broach the keyway slot into our fan hub, we need to know how far this woodruff key actually sticks out off of this shaft. I've gone ahead and measured it, and it's exactly 85 thousandths of an inch. This tool here is called the keyway broach. It has cutting teeth on the end of it that allow it to be driven through the center of the hole with a bushing like this one here, and it will cut a keyway into our fan hub. So just to give you guys a little bit of an idea on how all of this works, this is the bushing that I made that goes down into the center of the hole in the fan hub that we made. So this guy has a slot cut down the middle of it, and the keyway cutter fits right down into that slot. And it passes through it and cuts material off. And you can see from that end there, it's about flush with the top of it. And as it passes through, the teeth get bigger and bigger and bigger, and it cuts more material and creates that keyway. Now after you've done the first pass, you have to use a shim. And that shim goes inside of here like that and catches on the top edge with that little tang. And then the broach cutter just passes right along the top of that, and it allows you to push the broach farther and farther out until you've achieved the right depth of keyway. And honestly, for my first time doing this, for my first time using any of these tools, using any of these parts, and for making my own bushing, everything worked really, really well, and I'm extremely happy with the finished product. So now that you guys have seen me make this part from start to finish, let's take a look at how it actually fits onto this motor. So I've gone ahead and installed the woodruff key back in the end of this shaft. We've got our fan hub completely finished. We've got our tapered hole turned into the center of this, and we've cut the keyway. Now these two will go together just like this. You'll line the keyway up, if we can find it, and drop that guy right onto there like that. Then we've got a washer that goes on there. And a nut that goes on the end to retain the whole thing. Just like that. That gets tightened down. And there you've got a hydraulically driven fan. Alright guys, thanks for tuning into this week's episode. We've got this project all finished up for the most part. Here's what it looks like. Everything's all bolted together, it fits, everything lines up, and check it out. It even spins. In next week's episode, we're going to talk a little bit about how we're going to mount this motor in the engine bay of the bus. The mounting ears on this motor are recessed into this fan blade because the fan blade has so much offset. It could be as easy as turning the fan blade around and using it backwards, or engineering something to go around all of it. We'll see what we come up with. It'll be interesting. Let me know if you guys have any ideas down in the comments, and I'll talk to you guys next week. Thanks.